Okay, well, one of the interesting things that gets addressed with Easter, we don't often think about, is the topic of doubt. You ever hear the saying that if something sounds too good to be true, assume it is? It usually does prove to be true, especially when it comes to dealing with telemarketers and seeing certain advertisements like, you can get a free this if you do this. Oh, and you just made it not free. People often don't catch it. Well, the best news of all happened. So people couldn't receive it. But interestingly enough, the Gospels themselves, even to those who didn't get to meet Jesus and watch him die and rise again, it still causes a lot of skepticism with a lot of people. They'll point to the four Gospels, how each account gives a different account of what happened, and it almost sounds contradictory. Which was it? Was it this person going to the tomb, or a whole group of people, or what all really happened? Well, the fact of the matter is, different people give different perspectives. Each one of us only gets a piece of the puzzle. In a large part of my dad's work, which I'd like to thank him again for the last couple of Sundays, I did a pretty good job sharing from the book. In that work, he also did a synthesized version of the four gospel accounts of the resurrection. There's nothing taken away except that which is repeated, which you only see once, and nothing added except maybe a couple words for smooth clarity of reading. But this is the account of the resurrection from all four gospels combined into one script. I'm very impressed by this myself. I thought it would give us a good perspective on something here. So, this is the merged four gospel accounts of the resurrection. Now after the Sabbath, very early, while it was still dark, they started walking to the tomb. As they walked, it began to dawn, and they arrived. When the sun had risen on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, the mother of James, and Joanna, and also other women with them, came to look at the grave, bringing the spices which they had prepared. They were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" And they saw the stone already taken away from the tomb, although it was extremely large. A severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone. So Mary Magdalene ran and came to Simon Peter and to the tomb, and the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Peter and John went forth, and they were going to the tomb. The two were running together, and John ran ahead faster than Peter, and came to the tomb first. And stooping and looking in, he saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. And so Simon Peter also came, following him, and entered the tomb. And he saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the face cloth which had been on his head was not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. So the other disciple who had first come to the tomb then also entered, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead. So the disciples went away again to their own homes. But Mary was standing outside the tomb weeping, and she looked at the stone, and an angel sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. When the guards had seen this, they shook for fear of him, and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who has been crucified. He is not here, for he has risen just as he said. Come see the place where he was lying." But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were perplexed about this, behold, two angels appearing as two men suddenly stood near them in dazzling white robes. And as the women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, the men sat down, one at the head and one at the feet, where the body of Jesus had been lying. The one sitting on the right, appearing as a young man, said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." And they said to them, "Why do you seek the living one among the dead? Remember how he spoke to you while he was still in Galilee, saying that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and the third day rise again." But go quickly and tell his disciples and Peter that he is risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. Behold, I have told you." When she had said this, and the angels responded, Mary Magdalene turned around and saw Jesus standing there, and did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. And behold, Jesus met them and greeted them. And they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Jesus said to her, "Stop clinging to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brethren and say to them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, and my God and your God." Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and take word to my brethren to leave for Galilee, and there they will see me." And they remembered his words, and they quickly went out and fled from the tomb, trembling, for they were gripped with fear, astonishment, and great joy, and they said nothing to anyone. He first appeared to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. And she, along with Joanna and Mary the mother of James, also the other women with them, ran to report all these things to the 11 and all the rest, while they were mourning and weeping. "I have seen the Lord," she said and reported that he had said these things to her. Now, while they were on their way, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all that had happened. That is the perspective of all 4 Gospels, telling the same story, each presenting different pieces to the puzzle of what had happened. Did you see a contradiction there? I didn't. I saw a more complete picture. We watched the movie The Case for Christ. I also saw part of the documentary. And one of the things Lee Strobel pointed out is, look at these different Gospels. They all give such a different account. This has such a contradiction. How could you possibly trust this? He's not the only one to say that. These differing perspectives show authenticity, and it adds credibility for those who doubt. But I'll tell you what stood out to me in this, and in what we're going to read a little after this. Jesus had to deal with the problem of doubt. Mary Magdalene, it just wasn't sinking in with her. She was in shock and grief. Also says, make sure you tell Peter as well. He's still in a lot of grief. Lots not quite sunk in yet. But how did Jesus address doubt? We're going to take a look at some things. The first thing Jesus did was he gave people a chance to have faith. I've heard it says that doubt is present with faith, because if you have 100% certainty, then it's not faith. So there's got to be that little hint of uncertainty there. So what Jesus did was he first gave people a chance to have faith. He gave his word. Pharisees say, "Give us a sign that you're for real." He says, "Okay, I'm going to give you the sign of Jonah. Just like he was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights, the Son of Man is going to be in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights and then rise again." Yeah, we'll see if he pulls that off. He even says, "Tear down this temple, and in 3 days I'll build it back up." And we lose something in English here. What they actually said to him was, "We've been building this temple for 46 years. It took 80 years to complete. You're telling us you're going to tear it down and rebuild it in 3? Jesus was playing a mind game that they fell into. My dad addresses that in his book. But they also didn't want to catch the hint. Jesus was their new temple. He was going to be torn down and then rebuilt back up in 3 days, risen again. But he didn't stop there. He let us see an empty tomb. The angels did not roll away the stones so Jesus could get out. He went through walls. He's God. They rolled away the stone so we could see that he was not there anymore. Some people thought his body had to be stolen. The Pharisees were braced for that. They wanted the guards there to block it, to keep the thing shut for 3 days, saying his disciples might steal his body and propagate a story, which was incredibly laughable because they're all hidden in grief with their own face shaking. But there was an empty tomb. The linen wrapping still in order, no doubt, because Jesus passed through it, and they deflated, the face cloth put aside. He didn't stop there, though, in the process of faith. He gave people a chance to have faith with the way he selected witnesses. Angels should be pretty convincing, you'd think at least. But then again, there was Zacharias, who tells the angel in the Holy of Holies, "How will I know this for certain that I'm going to have a son, John the Baptist?" He says, "Okay, you want to know for certain? Boom, you're mute until the baby's born." This angel doesn't do this here. He's a little more understanding. Jesus first showed himself to the women. Very sexist society we're dealing with here. Women did not get to testify in court for some reason. But Jesus chose them to be his first witnesses. Gave them some credibility. Then he shows himself to the disciples. Eventually rises again into heaven after about 500 people got to see him alive again. But he gave people a chance to have faith that way. But what about for us today? We didn't get to see him die and come back to life, so what about us today? He still gives us a chance to have faith. And he did that by putting pieces to the puzzle on the table so that we would have a chance to look them out and put them together. In the Bible it says it's a glory to God to hide a matter and a glory of kings to search it out. One of the verses that was very reassuring to my dad as he wrote his book. But he knew that some people wouldn't be able to believe by faith, at least immediately. So he did something else to address our doubts. He gave his presence. Mary Magdalene needed it. She's crying outside the empty tomb thinking his body was taken. An angel is standing before her saying, "Why do you seek the living one among the dead? He's risen as he said." And it's not sinking in. She's still in shock and in grief, and it's just not sinking in. So Jesus himself shows up to her saying, "Why are you weeping?" She's thinking it's the gardener. I guess hasn't looked at his face yet, or her tears are still in her eyes, blurring her vision. And she automatically says, "If you've taken his body away, let me know where he's at." Then he calls her by name, and finally she gets it. Starts clinging to him. People can get their faith shaken. People can be hurt when they're young and not know what to believe anymore. God will have mercy on them. God understands that. Jesus' disciples needed his presence. Peter denies Jesus 3 times, right after Jesus looks at him, after the rooster crows. And he goes away crying. Peter still has guilt. I don't know what he saw in Jesus' eyes. I still love you. I told you were going to do this. Even though Jesus no doubt looked at him with love, he still couldn't quite receive that forgiveness. So he needed it reaffirmed. So don't forget to tell Peter about this. And then there's the classic doubter. And for this I'm going to read John chapter 20, verses 24 to 31. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, which also means twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were saying to him, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see his hands and imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." After 8 days, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas with them. Jesus came, the doors having been shut, and stood in the midst. See, that's why he didn't need to roll the stone to get out of the way. Here's proof of it. He can go through walls. "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Reach here with your finger and see my hands and reach here, your hand, and put it into my side. And do not be unbelieving, but believing. Thomas answered and said to him, My Lord and my God. Jesus said to him, Because you have seen me, you believed. Blessed are they who did not see and yet believed. Therefore many other signs Jesus also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these have been written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. Thomas knew Jesus, saw him, talked with him, listened to him, saw that he was dead, most skeptical of all of them. 10 other disciples and at least 3 other women are telling him, hey, we've seen the Lord. Got to be hallucinating, guys. It's entirely possible that 13 people could have the same hallucination because they're seeing what they want. Maybe they saw someone just like him, so I got to see him myself, and to make sure I'm not hallucinating, I got to put my finger in those wounds. And Jesus gives him that, and he believes. What does Jesus say? Thomas, shame on you for doubting. I can't use you. Go away. You're going to hell now. Right? No. He says, first of all, don't be faithless anymore, believe. Here, I've given you the proof you've asked for. Here it is. Now start believing, number 1. And number 2, Thomas, you believe because you've seen. Blessed are those who have not seen and believed anyway. In other words, Thomas, you'd be happy if you just believed by faith. At some point, you just got to have that. Has anybody here had the opportunity to see Jesus? Put your finger in his nail wounds and put your finger in his side. Anybody? I haven't either. So why do we believe all this stuff? It's called faith. The sequence that Jesus chose with his disciples was faith first and his presence next. But there are sometimes exceptions to that. I've heard in Muslim countries there have been people who have come to Christ because Jesus appeared to them in a dream. Many people have had the same dream there, and there ends up being mass revivals in villages. Heard of that happening once at least. But some people don't get to experience Jesus' presence. Some people don't have faith. So he made sure to make logical sense to us as well. He knew people would need proof. Anybody can claim to be God. People can fake a healing. Some people even have access to witchcraft and do things that look like healings and miracles. So Jesus says, okay. I need to do this for 2 reasons. First of all, the wages of sin is death. I'm going to pay it for you. But I'm also going to rise again from the dead. Did the founder of Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, or any of these other false religions do that? Not that I've heard of. Our Lord did. It's logical to want some proof with something huge like that. I mean, he's asking us to follow him to get to heaven. You're going to need something to back that up. And he sent it. He knew Thomas would need it. And interestingly enough, Thomas, he had to realize something here. He had to pass the gospel on. He ended up going to India. Those people weren't going to get the opportunity to put their finger in Jesus' wounds and see him. They had to believe by faith. Thomas couldn't give people what he didn't have himself. He needed to have faith that even though Jesus was up in heaven, he'd send his Spirit and strengthen him and be there for him. So what about those of us who can't see? How do you make logical sense of something you can't see, have never experienced, at least with a lot of your senses? I had a class in chemistry early when I was at college. I also had in physical science when I was in high school. The thing they've explained is that nobody has ever seen an atom. So everything that we study about them on tests that's so difficult is stuff that we logically assume to be true based on certain calculations and the effects that they have. That's the way it is with Jesus. We know there has to be a God. If there was a big bang, who was there to light the fuse we just heard downstairs? There had to be some artistry behind what we got here. He wouldn't give us reason for no reason, as I heard someone else say recently. But Christianity has also stood the test of time for 2,000 years. Immediately at its inception, the Pharisees want to kill Jesus. The Romans want to have you worshiping Caesar. Other countries want to worship their false gods, and they saw Christianity as a threat. It's been persecuted for 2,000 years. And it's not only stood the test of time, but it's still growing. You still had a whole bunch of Christians just today get murdered because Christ was real to them, and they followed him to the death. Here's where it takes a paradox, though. He makes logical sense by not making sense. Okay, I'm going to try to explain this one here. It's a little hard to follow. It makes no sense to me why God would die for his creation. I mean, people can make robots, but how many of you would jump out in front of a car and push your beloved robot out of the way and take the hit for it? I wouldn't either. Even if I could bring myself back from the dead, I wouldn't exactly appreciate feeling the pain of getting hit by a car. Jesus died something much more painful. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't fully understand how the whole Trinity thing works. I know that he's three persons in one. I don't know all the details of it. But that's part of what makes him God. Do you fully understand yourself? Do you fully understand why you make certain decisions, why you feel certain ways sometimes? I've had instances where I don't. Those of you who are married or in a romantic relationship, do you fully understand your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend? No, it's even harder yet. So, would God be very much of a God if we could fully understand him? No. So by not making sense, by being bigger and stronger and smarter, and more creative and more powerful than we are, and being beyond our understanding, it makes sense to follow him. If you can't save yourself on this earth, even in certain physical situations, let alone get yourself into heaven, don't you want somebody who's significantly stronger and smarter and more capable than you, who made you, to point you the way? So it makes sense that he doesn't always make sense to us. And when it triggers our doubts sometimes. So interestingly enough, what did Jesus do with doubt? He showed mercy on those who doubted and helped them. And in the book of Jude, we're specifically commanded also to have mercy on those who doubt. We live in a fallen world. Even those who claim to be Christians can fail us, can show us bad examples, can make mistakes with their character flaws. You can't just let your faith be shaken by that. God is real, even when our imperfect flesh is incapable of perfectly following him. And God will have mercy on you when you have doubts. And we need to have mercy on others when they have doubts. That is part of the Easter story. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for all that you do for us. I ask that you give us your presence, look out after us as we drive home today. I ask that your face would shine upon everyone today, and that everyone would hear your message. If they didn't absorb something today that you had for them, let them find it at some point whenever they need it. Please let them have your word, either through me or in spite of me. You can use whatever channel you want. I ask that you would help us to grow closer and closer to the image of your Son. And once again, thank you for dying to pay for our sin and for rising again from the dead so that we would have our doubts removed. And I pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen. Amen. Happy Resurrection Day, and go in peace.
What? I'm sorry. What?